Let's study 9th standard ICSE Biology, Chapter 11, the Digestive System.
This is the path. This is the journey which the pizza slice that you ate yesterday took in your body before it was digested to give you nutrients and energy, if it had any. Let's study the digestive juices secreted by each part of the entire alimentary canal, as well as the digestive glands. And let's understand how digestion takes place. First of all, why do we need the digestive system? The food that we eat has nutrients in a very complex form. The compounds are very huge. For example, carbohydrates, proteins. Comparatively, these molecules are so huge that blood cannot transport it, or lymph cannot transport it to the various tissues. So first they should be broken down into simpler substances, smaller substances, soluble substances, so that they can be absorbed by blood and by lymph, and they can be transported. Once they are transported, then they can be again converted into protoplasm or other substances. That is called assimilation. But digestion is defined as the breakdown of naturally occurring foodstuffs into diffusible form using enzymes. There is a bigger definition as well, but I'm sure you would prefer a smaller one. Now let's study some interesting characteristics about enzymes. Enzymes are biocatalysts. They help to increase the rate of reactions in a body. The digestion takes place quickly with the help of enzyme. They're all proteins, so they are destroyed by heating. And they're very specific in nature. And they don't take part in the reaction, so they can be used again and again. They act best in a particular pH, so that is a particular degree of acidity or alkalinity, and the optimum temperature for them is 35 to 40 degrees Celsius. That is why when you have very high fever, it is dangerous because the enzymes stop working and the reactions in a body come to a stop. Now the digestive system is made up of the alimentary canal and the digestive glands. As you can see in this diagram, the alimentary canal starts with the mouth. Then we have the pharynx, which is the common opening for the food pipe, esophagus, and the windpipe, the trachea. After the esophagus, we have the stomach. Then we have the small intestine, the large intestine. This is entirely 9 meters long. Out of that, the small intestine itself is 6 meters long. So by no means is the small intestine small. It's long. We call it small intestine simply because its diameter is very less. And the large intestine, even though it's shorter, its diameter is comparatively larger. Associated with the alimentary canal, I see many glands. We have the salivary glands, which are of 3 varieties: sublingual, parotid, and submandibular. Mandible means jaw, which secrete saliva into the buccal cavity, which is the mouth cavity. Esophagus has no enzymes, so no digestion takes place here. It's just a passage for the partially digested food. And then it reaches the stomach. In the stomach, the gastric juices are released by the walls of the stomach. Then we have a pyloric spinster. Spinster is like a valve which makes sure that food moves forward only after intermittent intervals, let's say after every 4 hours or so. And it prevents the backflow of the food. Even here, at the junction of esophagus and stomach, there is a spinster muscle called the cardiac spinster. Where you vomit, the cardiac spinster may open up and the food may go up. A reverse peristalsis happens, which will be explained shortly. Now, into the small intestine is released certain juices. First of all, we have the bile juice being released by the common bile duct. The common bile duct is from the gallbladder as well as the liver. The liver produces bile, but sometimes it's stored in the gallbladder, so even the gallbladder may release the bile. The pancreas is another gland which releases pancreatic juice into the small intestine. The small intestine has 3 parts. The starting part is called the duodenum. Then we have the jejunum, and the final part is called the ilium. Now in the ilium, The walls of the small intestine itself produces some intestinal juices which completes digestion. And even absorption of food starts. So the digested food starts getting absorbed into the blood because there are many blood capillaries surrounding it. And the fats get absorbed by the lymph so that all these nutrients and water can be transported to various parts of the body. And then the undigested food passes into the large intestine. The large intestine, well, at the junction of the small intestine and the large intestine, we have an appendix, which is a vestigial organ in human beings, although it's very useful in herbivores so that they can digest grass and other plant parts which have cellulose. Although we can't digest cellulose, even we should eat it, because the roughage that cellulose provides helps prevent constipation, helps easy passage of the stools through the ascending colon, transverse colon, and the descending colon. This pouch at the beginning of the colon is called the cecum. The end of the large intestine is the rectum. That's where stools are stored. That is the waste product. And the opening through which egestion takes place is called anus. Egestion is different from excretion. Excretion means removal of metabolic wastes. For example, urine. Urination is excretion. Egestion is just the removal of undigested food. So that is not excretion, although we call the feces as excreta. In the large intestine, no digestion takes place, but some reabsorption of water does take place. That is why the stools become solid or semi-solid. Now let's study about the structures of the teeth and the types of teeth. This figure is double-ticked. The teeth are of 4 types: incisors, canines, premolars, and molars. If you look at your lower jaw or your upper jaw, you will notice that human beings have 2 pairs of incisors, 1 pair of canine, that is on the left hand side and right hand side, 2 pairs of premolars, and 3 pairs of molars. So totally that's 2 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3. That's the formula for an adult human teeth. 8. 8 on the RHS, 8 on the LHS, that's 16 on one jaw, and on the other jaw also 16. So totally an adult human has 32 teeth. We need to remember this number. By the way, the last tooth, the last molar called wisdom tooth, it grows only after you are an adult. That is 18 years and beyond. And some people don't even have it. Perhaps they lack the wisdom. Now, different shapes of the teeth are for different functions. Incisors, they are good for biting and cutting. Canines are good for tearing the food. So you can imagine carnivores have very sharp canines. And human beings are actually omnivores. Being a vegetarian is simply a choice, not a biological fact for human beings. Premolars and molars, they help in grinding and crushing the food. Now in babies, they have only 20 teeth initially, which are called milk teeth or deciduous teeth or temporary teeth. Then by the time they are 12 years of age, all these teeth have been replaced one by one by the permanent teeth, which are bigger in size, because by the time a child becomes a teenager, even the jaws become bigger. So then they have 32 teeth, which are permanent. So for a human child, the formula is for ICPM, that is incisors, canines, premolars and molars. The formula is actually 2102. So we don't say that they have any premolars, we just call them molars. For adolescents, that is up till around 20 years, they have 2122, totally 28 teeth, which are permanent. And adults have 1 extra wisdom tooth out here, so totally 4 extra wisdom teeth. So that's 32 teeth. Now let's read the structure of the tooth, which is double ticked. This is clearly of a canine or incisor, and this is of a premolar or molar because it has cusps on top, which is missing in this teeth. So the outermost layer is called enamel. That is the hardest substance in the human body, stronger than bones. Inside that we have a bone-like substance called the dentine. In the central region we have the pulp. Now the pulp has blood vessels, nerves. So if a cavity reaches the pulp, then the pain starts. Here the part of the jaw touching the teeth is called the gum. This part of the teeth, which is embedded deep inside the jawbone, is called the root, which is stuck to the jawbone with the help of cement. This part, constriction part here, is called the neck, whereas this entire top part is called the crown. Now let's study the various glands, digestive glands of the body. The first one is salivary glands. I've already told you the types of salivary glands. Now their function is to moisten and lubricate the food. Most importantly, they have an enzyme called ptyalin or salivary amylase, which converts starch into maltose. So to understand the entire digestion at one glance, let's start with this blue table. So this table is very important. So first of all, in the mouth, the chewing is called mastication. Salivary glands release saliva, which have ptyalin, and they convert starch into maltose, which is a disaccharide. That is why if you chew food, like starchy food like wheat, rice for a very long time, they start tasting sweet, because starch, being a polysaccharide, does not taste sweet. But disaccharides like maltose, it's a sugar, so it does taste sweet. Then it moves to the esophagus. There no digestion takes place. Then it goes into the stomach. The stomach walls also crush the food, they churn and they temporarily store the food. Gastric juice is released, which has hydrochloric acid as well, released by the lining of the stomach. This hydrochloric acid not only kills the many germs in the food, but it also activates a very important enzyme called pepsin. So the inactive enzyme was pepsinogen, but because of hydrochloric acid, the pepsinogen of the gastric juice is converted into pepsin, and this pepsin helps to digest proteins into polypeptides, which are smaller proteins. Similarly, renin can convert casinogen, the milk protein, into simpler protein, which results in curdling of milk inside the stomach. But this is found only in young human beings, not in adults. So adults cannot digest milk proteins. Some adults can't even digest milk sugars, so they may not find milk useful at all. But for kids, it's very nutritious. Now, this hydrochloric acid is quite corrosive, so the lining of the stomach also releases mucus to protect the lining of the stomach from the hydrochloric acid. Then, the food, which was called a bolus after masticating in the mouth, and now it's called the chyme after being digested by the stomach partially, it enters the small intestine. So you can see the digestion of starch started in the mouth, the digestion of protein started in the stomach, and the digestion of fats will start in the duodenum. So in the duodenum, two juices are released. One is bile, which is released by the liver. It is not an enzyme, but it is actually a waste product, which is useful because it converts fats into emulsified fats. That means fat droplets. So that the future digestion will become easy if the fats are broken into smaller fat droplets. And another important function of bile is that it converts the acidic food into alkaline. You see, HCl had made the food acidic, which was important for pepsin to work and renin to work. But now, for the future enzymes to work, we need an alkaline environment, and that is done with the help of bile, because bile has sodium carbonate, as well as pigments like bilirubin and biliverdin. The pancreatic juice is released by pancreas, which has many enzymes. For example, amylopsin or pancreatic amylase, you can see it is similar to salivary amylase. It converts the leftover starch to maltose. Often, you all don't chew properly, so all the starch is not converted to maltose. Then the job is finished by amylopsin. It also has trypsin. Again, this is similar to pepsin. It will continue the digestion of proteins and polypeptides and break them into smaller peptides and amino acids. And finally, stepsin or lipase. It converts the emulsified fats, that is the droplets of fats, into fatty acids and glycerol. Then this partially digested food passes through the jejunum, where nothing much happens. And the final part of the small intestine is the ileum, which produces intestinal juice through the intestinal glands between the villi. I will explain villi shortly, but let's study the enzymes released by it. Erepsin, also called peptidase, converts the remaining proteins and peptides into amino acids. Maltase will convert maltose into glucose, which is the final product, the simplest sugar, a monosaccharide. Sucrase, also called invertase, will convert sucrose into glucose and fructose, so it is broken into disaccharide, is broken into monosaccharides. Similarly, lactase will convert lactose into glucose and galactose, and lipase will convert fats into fatty acids and glycerol. So the end products of digestion are proteins are converted into amino acids, starch is converted into glucose, and fats are converted into fatty acids and glycerol. These are the end products of digestion. So glucose, as well as varieties of glucose, isomers of glucose, as well as amino acids, vitamins, minerals, and water are absorbed by blood. But fatty acids and glycerol cannot be absorbed by blood. They are absorbed by lymph, which is another fluid in the body. But unlike RBCs, unlike blood, lymph does not have RBCs. And unlike blood, it does not have platelets. It just has WBCs. More about it in another chapter. Now finally, the large intestine. No digestion takes place here. Only absorption takes place here. By the way, absorption of nutrients and water had already started in the small intestine, but the absorption is completed in the large intestine. The colon and the rectum, there the water is absorbed, and some of the digested food may be absorbed, especially vitamins and minerals. And here the stools are temporarily stored before releasing it, which is called egestion. So you need to learn it like a story. Now let's understand how food passes through the esophagus. It doesn't just fall down due to gravity. First of all, when you swallow, it's important that the food enters only the food pipe, the esophagus, and not the trachea. So whenever you swallow, automatically the epiglottis closes this gap, which is called the glottis. So if the epiglottis is closing the glottis, then the trachea is blocked off. For that second, that fraction of a second, you cannot even breathe, which is fine. And the food, that is the bolus, enters the esophagus. So that's the function of the epiglottis. It prevents the food from entering the trachea. But if you are eating in a hurry or talking while eating, sometimes food or water may enter the trachea, due to which you start coughing. You can even see there is larynx present here, which is the voice box. It has vocal cords, but that has nothing to do with digestion. This common opening is, by the way, called pharynx. Now once it enters the food pipe, there is a wave of constriction and relaxation around the food, due to which the food is pushed downward and forward. This is called peristalsis. Otherwise, the food will get stuck because the esophagus is very narrow. This peristalsis happens in the entire gut. That is not just the esophagus, but even in the intestines, to push it forward. And some mucus is also produced to lubricate the flow. Sometimes reverse peristalsis can happen and the food may be pushed up, example when you're vomiting. Now you can see how HCl is activating even the prorenin into renin, but this is only in kids, which will convert the casein into paracasein, which is a smaller protein and it's insoluble. Now this food stays in the stomach for about 3 hours and becomes chyme, and then the pylorus opens and it enters the small intestine. The small intestine, as mentioned, had 3 parts: duodenum, jejunum, and ileum, and we know what happens in each of them. Jejunum, it's almost always empty, even during a post-mortem, hence the name jejunum has been given to it. Now ileum is special because it has hair-like structures, tiny finger-like structures called villi. Now this is a very magnified image of one villi, it's double-ticked. Here you can see that there is a single epithelial tissue. It has lacteal, that is a lymph vessel, as well as blood capillary. So many such villi on the surface of the small intestine's ileum increases the surface area, so the rate of absorption as well as digestion increases. Also, the small intestine is very narrow, so that the food can flow through them very slowly, making the digestion more efficient. So these are the adaptations of the small intestine for absorption of digested food. Next, we study the function of bile. In the diagram, we can clearly see that the duodenum receives 2 juices. One is bile from the liver or the gallbladder, and the pancreatic juice is from the pancreas. Then we study the functions of the bile, which is twofold. It makes the environment alkaline, which is important for the future enzymes to work, and it emulsifies fat. Pancreatic juice, it has many enzymes which help in digestion of food. We need to learn all the names present here. And then the final digestion takes place in the ileum through the intestinal juices. We need to remember all the enzymes names, the substrate, and the final products as well. Now remember that the amino acids and the simple sugars are absorbed by blood, and then they go to the hepatic portal vein, whereas the fatty acids and glycerol are absorbed by the lymph. And ultimately, even they will join the blood. Excess of fatty acids are stored in your body in the adipose tissue. Now, this hepatic portal vein is something very crucial for a body, which I'll talk about shortly. But before that, let's study the large intestine. I've already told you it has parts like the cecum and the appendix. We need to learn all the locations, the colon and the rectum. The large intestine is a place where a lot of absorption of water takes place. But after digestion and absorption, what happens is called assimilation. That is the conversion of the absorbed digested food into body material. The glucose which is absorbed goes to the tissues, and this glucose is used to make protoplasm or to provide energy or to convert it into glycogen. The amino acids absorbed by blood can again be joined together to make various proteins, and proteins are required in a body to make antibodies, enzymes, hormones, etc. Now, if you look at the human body, whatever food is absorbed by the blood, that is first sent to the liver by a blood vessel system called the hepatic portal vein or hepatic portal system. You'll study this in detail in 10th standard, but it is very important that the absorbed food and that blood goes to the liver first, so that liver can detoxify any toxins which may be there. If there is excessive glucose, it will be stored in the form of glycogen for future use. If there is excessive amino acids, then the amino acids are broken into nitrogenous wastes like urea and into glucose, so that the glucose can be used and the urea can be excreted out of the body. So this breakdown of excessive amino acids is called deamination. You see, excess amino acids cannot be stored in a body. There will be deamination in the liver. But what about fats? Well, fats are not absorbed by the blood, so they will not pass to the hepatic portal vein. Rather, they are absorbed by the lymph system, and they will be transported to the relevant parts of the body like the various skin areas, and the fats can be stored under our skin or surrounding some organs. So now we know the importance of the liver.
Hi students, this is AJ sir. If you like this video, press the like button. If you would like to enroll for my online test series or online lectures, email me or message me on Instagram. Check the description for more information.